So just before I get into this lecture, I want to explain for the slightly more advanced people that this section is purely a console game in Visual Studio. We don't even open Unreal Engine in this section. So if you're a seasoned C++ developer, please do just skip ahead to section 3, the building escape, and we'll get straight into Unreal stuff. This really is just the basics. An alternative is you could go to the last lecture, have a look at our final bit of code, make sure everything's clear to you, and then carry on. But for everybody else, let's get on. Hey guys and girls, so I want to talk to you a little bit about game design documents and start to introduce a process for planning your games. Now it's going to be very brief because we don't have a lot of experience at this stage and there's a lot of planning that we can't do. So in this video we're going to talk about how much planning we should do. That's not very much for this first game. I suggest you spend an hour or two on the planning. Define the emotional problem the game solves. And I'll explain where I got that idea from later. But basically, in all marketing and in all software, we're always solving a problem. So we've got to think about the problem for the player that we're solving. It's an interesting angle. Choose the concept, rule, and requirements. That's another very basic skeleton for a game design document. And start to think about the architecture of the game. That's the thing that you can't do yet, because with this current level of experience, I'm assuming you don't know much about games or programming or game design. You can't really think about the software architecture because you don't know enough about it. So we're going to kind of skip that. And then we're going to copy as much as possible of this into the code. We're actually going to do that in a future lecture. But I just want to mention that we want this stuff to end up not just some dead, dry document, but we want our eyes on this stuff regularly. It's going to be a moving plan. We also want to document now what may change later. So future ideas for the game, we need a not going to do now list. It's really important we restrict the scope. If you don't take anything away from this slide apart from this, the most important thing we do here in this design is we work out what our initial requirements are for assets, for code, etc. And we stick to them until we've got that working and we have a nice don't do list. Okay, good book for you is Code Complete by Steve McConnell. Microsoft Press 2004. Chapter 3.3 talks about requirements and the problem that the game solves. So let's dive straight in, talk about the problem, and then in a minute I'm going to challenge you to write down the requirements. So an example of the problem this word game solves is I want a mental challenge. That could be a problem it would solve. I'm sitting there on the sofa and I think, oh, I want a mental challenge. Maybe we reach the bull cow game. I want to feel smart or prove myself. Perhaps you're just feeling a little thick or something and you need to prove yourself. So maybe you just miss word puzzles. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing. Maybe you want to prove yourself again. Maybe you want to challenge or feel superior to, if we're honest, somebody else. So maybe you want to kind of shove the game in front of somebody else's face. Anyway, there's lots of reasons, but it's important to get clear on the problem that the game solves. I know it's a strange thing to think about, but games still do scratch emotional itches. So what itch are they scratching? So what's the concept and the rules of the game? So you need to just write that down. It's a guess the isogram game. An isogram is a word with no repeating letters. The user has a limited number of guesses. That's one of the things that makes it fun. And after each guess, the computer outputs a bull, which is the right letter in the right place. So think of bullseye if you want to remember it. Or cow, which is the right letter in the wrong place. So bulls and cows, that's where it gets its name. And you win by guessing the word within a maximum number of tries. Cool. So that is the concept and the rules all in one, actually. That's simple. Look, we've only got 5 bullet points. Okay, 7 if you count the sub-bullets. But we've got the concept and the rules of the game written down. That's pretty powerful, and that's the sort of thing I want you to do with your game. Okay, so what I want you to do now is write up the requirements. So knowing what the game needs to do, I want you to think about what the inputs will be and in what format. Remember, this is a console game, so let me give you a hint here. The input is just text. Just plain text on the console. What will the outputs be? What tasks will the user be asked to do? Do we have any performance limitations to think about in this simple game? And what assets are going to need to be created? Art, story, sound, etc. So have a think and pause the video for a moment, grab a sheet of paper or a document and start writing down some bullets, some really simple ideas of requirements. Try and get to at least 5 requirements. Okay, so pause the video. I know you don't necessarily know what you're doing here and this is a little fuzzy, but look, there's enough prompts on the screen and I want you to get used to thinking about what are the requirements? What is this game going to need? Okay, have a go. Cool, so welcome back. Hopefully you did pause the video there and you're doing the challenge. Here are some ideas of requirements. Plain text instructions for all interactions. That's something we're going to need. Things like introducing the game and helping the user to make valid guesses and stuff. Code to deal. I should say deal with, but code to help the player make a valid guess, i.e. all lowercase, is it an isogram, is the word that they're putting in the right length. So we're going to need code to help them make a guess correctly. Code to check the number of bulls and cows in the guess compared to the hidden word. That's kind of the core of the game. And code to keep track of the number of valid guesses, of course, and other things that we've forgotten. But I just want to give you an idea of some of the things that you'd want to put into this. And of course, these will actually translate into routines and lines of code quite shortly. So, possible future ideas. Another way of looking at this is the no list. These are things we're not going to do, okay? And it's important to have this list. It really is important to have a list of things you've specifically chosen not to put in this version of the game. Okay, so we want to give feedback on every key press perhaps in the future. We can't actually do that in a console because a console submits an entire string in one game, but in the 3D version of the game, we might want feedback on every key press. So let me just revisit that. What I mean is if you start to type a non-isogram, say I start typing the word every, then I might type EV, and then when I hit the next E, it may kind of go blah, blah, or shake or do something to say, no, you can't put another E in because you've already had an E, and if you did, it would not be an isogram. So key level checking. Have a large dictionary of hidden words, so the game plays with more than just one word. Have a user selectable word length, so the user chooses a word length, and then maybe even a difficulty level as well. So if you have a long word, you get lots of tries, but if it's on hard, you get less tries, that type of thing. Checking the user's guess is a dictionary isogram. So every time they put a guess in, maybe it goes into a standard dictionary and says, well, is this a word in the dictionary, and is it an isogram? Maybe we provide a time limit for the guesses, put the pressure on a little. Maybe we have a hint system. Maybe you could spend one of your turns in return for a hint. I don't know. But these are possible future ideas, and importantly, these are things we're not going to do in this version of the game. So that's it. We've covered an overview of how you would do a design. Hopefully you've at least written down the requirements, which is the bits that we need to move on to the next stage. We're going to skip over the software architecture this time round because we're going to build this code from the inside out, starting with the coding and then wrapping things up into what we call routines and then kind of building outwards like that. So in future sections and future games, we'll get a little bit more detailed on our planning, but this is enough for now. Let's crack on in the next video and get our environment set up.